shall we start with an apology?
Apology?
Yeah, because you've left behind the expensive Russell Lodge production sign and replaced it with some cheap plant.
Well, I've got a lens cap. New lens day! I finally got the 14 to 24.
He's just got the wrong one of the Trinity that was missing. He should have got the 70 to 200. He just got to the wrong end of the range.
I'll go all the way around it. So yeah, so a year ago, we made a video, a very good video.
Obviously, they're all very good, aren't they?
The 14 to 30, where I said it changed the way I shoot.
I remember that.
I've actually changed the way I approach my look at photography.
I thought you only really wanted that really wide angle when you hadn't got room to move back away from your subject. But are you now saying you want to use it in other venues where you've got plenty of room because it's got a different look about it? Yeah.
And it did.
Because you shot wide.
Yeah, basically, because I've always shot 24. And once you go below 20, if I go super wide, it really does.
Different look.
Whole different look. But at the end of that video, I said, my concern is low light. With a wedding ceremony, when they're at the front, I like to get the whole room in, groomsmen, bridesmaids, couple in the middle, and the registrar says, you may kiss the bride. So I've got wide, and then I go zoom in to the couple. So that's what I've been doing with the 14 to 30. The problem is, all the venues, especially in this time of year, in winter, are dark. So an f4, to crop in and to zoom in a bit more, it's really difficult. It's doable, but I have to denoise and I can't crop in as far. So then I got the 21.8 to compensate for this.
Yeah.
The problem is, it wasn't wide enough for me. It just didn't get the full spectrum of the room, and it wasn't versatile enough because I couldn't zoom in because it doesn't zoom in.
So here you are, you started with the lowly 14 to 30 f4,
yeah.
Then went 20 f1.8, and you've chopped both of those in now.
I needed a lower aperture, so Nikon released the 17 to 28 2.8. So I think, well, that's kind of will fit all the things I want. I just need a lower light. 17 is enough. But it's an unknown. We don't know what quality it's going to be. And we've had other lenses before, like the 24 to 200. Eventually we get a bit...
Yeah, which is a great lens for what it's aimed at.
Yeah.
But it's not as good as the 24 to 120 in terms of the end result.
No.
So even though you're losing a bit of the length, that's why I swapped mine for that.
Yes. I was going to trade in the 14 to 30 for £800 they were going to give me, and then I'd have to spend £300 more to get the 17 to 28.
Right.
And so I'd be spending more to get a lesser lens potentially, but the less quality lens overall.
Yeah.
So that would be a bit of
the only benefit would be one extra stop of light.
Yeah, but thankfully, one retailer had this lens, a massive discount, I don't know why, brand new, for £1,700, where normally this is the most expensive of the Trinity at the moment. It's usually £2,300.
Wow.
So that's a massive, massive discount.
Yeah.
Because this is what kind of fits all the requirements. It's wide and it's 2.8. So that's where I kind of went. So I spent a lot more than I was intending to. So I traded in my 21.8 and my 14 to 30, and this added up to about the same price as this lens, 1,700. And here we are.
So here we are. Now you're going to test it against my lowly 14 to 30.
I know.
Which you've binned off and sold, and you're going to hope that it justifies your decision and you don't end up with buyer's remorse.
Well, the main purpose is the 2.8, which it will work. It'll have my ISO, but what else will it reveal? I mean, first off, the lens construction, out the box, I was amazed by it. I'm just so impressed by the engineering. It's top grade, 10 out of 10 for construction. It feels really light as well.
So fingers crossed for you then.
Yeah.
You're going to be happy that you made the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, we'll find out.
We will.
Sharpness test in good light at the same settings at f4. So at 100% crop, they look very similar. I would say the 14 to 24 is slightly sharper in the center, only ever so slightly. And here's the difference between 2.8 and f4. They both look almost identical, which is great because shooting at 2.8 is razor sharp. At 24mm now, same settings. I would say the 14 to 24 is a bit sharper here. The edge sharpness now at 14. If we go on Antarctica here, you can see that the 14 to 24 has a sharper image rendition on the edges, and you can start to see the fabric of this world map, and on the 14 to 30 it's not so clear. Looking at edge sharpness again, the same occurs. Has a clearer image rendition than the 14 to 30. So looking at the physical size of the lenses, sure, the 14 to 30 when it's collapsed is that inch smaller and compact, although when it's extended they are actually a very similar size. So the 14 to 30 lens is 485 gram and the 14 to 24 is 650 gram. So colour difference here. While I've been testing the two lenses, I have seen quite a big difference in colour temperature difference between the two. The 14 to 30 does have a cooler colour temperature, and the 14 to 24 does tend to have a more colour accurate white balance rendition. Of course this can be corrected afterwards. Low light test. So I've switched the lights off and it's high ISO now. So comparing it to the 14 to 30 at f4, it'd be very similar. Without cropping in, they look almost the same. So on the edges and in the darker areas, the f4 will suffer even more so. So comparing both the lenses at f4 with the same settings, they are very similar. I would say the 14 to 24 has a slightly better image rendition, even though they're on the same settings. On the edges here in Australia, you can see the colour noise is higher on the 14 to 30. So with noise reduction on them both now, you can see how the 2.8 version makes a much cleaner image. Hardly any colour noise here compared to the 14 to 30. Let's look on the edges in the dark. Let's go to Australia. Yeah, you can see the colour damage here, and there is some on the 14 to 24, but it's a much more usable image. I can see on the edges it's even more so. Real world low light test. So this is the only difference is the 2.8, and without cropping in they both look okay. 100% crop reveals different things. So you can see how with the f4 the blacks become completely messed up, distorted, colour noise, and with the 2.8 they're much better. You'd have to halve your shutter speed to get the same ISO, and then it is a similar image. Even when they are set on exactly the same settings, the 40 to 24 does seem to have a better image rendition. You see my cat here, whereas on this side it's more of a blurry mess. So looking at depth of field, so if you flip between the two, I know it's slightly different angles, but you can see here the fridge and the background is much more together. 2.8 version really does smooth the background out. Is there any difference in the depth of field here? As you can see here on the f4, you can start to see the tiles coming together, and on a 2.8 version it's smooth. So to maximise the depth of field, I'm shooting at 30mm on the 14 to 30 and 2.8 at 24mm. As with longer focal lengths, the background appears to be closer to the subject, and that's what's happened here. You can see the fridge appears a lot closer on the 14 to 30. If I crop into the same level with the 14 to 24, does the background look any different? It's kind of focal length versus aperture here. I'd say they're both very good at this, considering it's only 24mm. It's interesting to see the sharpness difference. So 100% on the 14 to 24. So if I scale them the same, well, you can certainly see the difference in colour tone, but I would say the 14 to 30 has the advantage here because of the focal length, but it's very similar. If I switch to f4 on the 14 to 24, and yet it's a lot sharper, you just start to see the real grain in the wood in the box. But it's close. but I would say the 14 to 24 has a sharper image in the center. 24 at 2.8 versus 30 f4. So testing the chroma levels and ghosting, this is good for astrophotography. This is where the light at the side of the frame becomes, well, ghosted and distorted, as you can see here with the 14 to 30, these artifacts here. Whereas on the 14 to 24, same settings, it's not really there. Even when I shoot at 2.8, which could bring it in, it's brought it in a tiny bit, but still nothing really there at all. Now that's incredible. There's no artifacts at all. So if you're shooting astrophotography, this is a game changer. Or if you're shooting low light with street lights like this. I did a quick walk around Coventry for some architecture photos to see the distortion in real world, and to be honest, I couldn't find that much difference between the images here. The 14 to 24 has a different colour image rendition, it's warmer. It does seem to have a slightly crisper image, but not much in it. But with distortion, they look very similar. Apart from the very far corner of this image, you can see this lady on the bench. Of course, it's still heavily, this is meant to be upright. But on the 14 to 30, it is seemed to be more warped one way towards the centre of the image. Obviously this spire is meant to be straight up. Again, the 14 to 24 is a slightly crisper image, different colour tones, and slightly different angle. So with the corrections on, the spires are now straight. There isn't that much difference between them. Another example with the corrections on. You can see the 14 to 24 has a much warmer image. Now I've corrected the 14 to 30 with a similar warmth, and they look almost identical.
But the problem is, in Lightroom, when you put the 14 to 24 photos in, it
automatically
profile it in. With the 14 to 30, there's no profile.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it kind of cheats straight away.
The 14 to 24?
Yeah, because there's a profile for it.
So that's the point to make.
Right, so there we go. All the tests are complete. What did you think?
So I thought it was really interesting. It's, I think it's fairly clearly a better lens. Is it a case of, like some of the other comparisons, you pay like the F50 f1.2 compared to 51A? Is it? Would you agree that you're paying twice as much to get 10% better?
I'll actually compare it to the 24 to 70s. It's better.
F4 and F2A?
Yeah, because the F4 you can get for 300 quid now used.
It's a brilliant lens.
And the 2.8 version is 4 times the price.
Right.
But you're not getting 4 times the lens, are you? So it kind of is like that. However, I think there are more advantages to this lens than the differences with 24 to 70s. So like the big one is the chroma. There's ghosting. There's nothing on this lens.
Chroma or chroma? Chroma. The ghosting.
Yeah.
Leave it at ghosting.
Whichever way you say it.
Just call it a ghost.
Yeah, basically the ghosting. There's nothing.
That was amazing. I did see that comparison where there was clearly quite a bit on.
Yeah,
this, but
I've never seen
nothing
that.
on that.
I've never seen that so clear before.
And if you're taken in exactly the same
setting, same location.
Okay.
So if you're doing astrology, then this is a no-brainer.
Astrology is when you tell somebody's future by looking at the stars.
Astrology.
No, that is still astrology.
I think it's astrology.
It's not astrology. You've got to leave my comments in, don't you, mate? I'll never talk to you again.
If you're doing astrophotography,
as opposed to astrology,
maybe you could do astrology too with this. And if you're really looking at meticulous details, so if you're doing landscape, you want edge-to-edge sharpness, then this is the very best. I got this lens to do the low light, and it worked. I've done a few weddings with it, super wide. I've cropped in. They're embedded in the shadow. I've raised up the shadows. It's sharp, no noise, job's done. But the bonuses have been several little bonuses that I didn't think that was going to happen. Like the straight out of camera look, the image rendition, that, like you said with your 70 to 200, it has a certain look. Yeah. And I think this has its own look too. All those little several things, like with sharpness and doing the test with your lens, this always seemed to be more accurate and more colourful rendition straight away. So things like that, I think they all come together to create a more better experience with this lens. But would I pay Full price for it? No. I think I would have gone for the 17 to 28. But I have a feeling, without testing it, that all the bonuses of this lens compared to that one would be the opposite with a 17 to 28. So it would be less sharp, more distortion.
Yeah. Wouldn't have that look about it.
Certainly wouldn't. And so that would be the difference, but that would probably be good enough for what I want it for indoor photography.
I think for me, because I don't use wide angle that often, got no desire to spend that much more money to get that.
Yeah.
The number of times I use this is more than adequate for it.
Yeah.
This is still a great lens.
Yeah.
That is another step up, obviously, but for twice the money. So.
It is, yeah. I mean, so if you didn't have any of them, you would still go for the...
I think I would, yeah, only because I don't have the same professional requirement for it as you do. I mean, it's getting you out of trouble in low light situations. Yeah. You've absolutely got to get the best shot you can.
Does this lens get your stamp of approval there?
It does. But, you know, based on your use case.
Yeah.
And it's comforting, I guess, for you when you're using it, knowing you've got the best in class.
This is the most expensive out of all the Trinity now. So this definitely gets my stamp of approval. I'd be really interested to try this lens against the 17 to 28. So if Nikon are watching, we're happy to do the comparison for you.
They're very grateful.